Okay, today we've got Tzefania and Reyyna Pappas, Greg Raley. All of us have ties to BYNA. I'm Solomon Lopez. So if you just joined us, we are streaming. We're going to be streaming some things, but we're going to be sharing about the first BYNA Yosef Congress. Today is the 7th anniversary of it. It's a very special time. And so I know many are coming off a holiday weekend of Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, and it's giving us a wonderful opportunity to interact with one another in this way with regards to remembering all of the wonderful things he's done in the last 7 years. I know that here recently we've got some videos we produced for BYNA Yosef North America, and so we want to first start off and just quick introductions with everyone on this call. Greg, we'll start with you. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do for BYNA Yosef.
Well, I'm the social media manager for BYNA Yosef North America, and been watching BYNA Yosef out of Israel, the congresses, the three congresses in the past, and they are so important to us, and people. A lot of people don't realize exactly what they are. They are very valuable to the restoration of the whole house of Israel. It's important that every believer knows at least something about the congresses, but the first congress held on this date, Hebrew calendar date, that is, the 7th of Sivan, the day after Shavuot, 7 years ago. And so that's why I'm involved. I want to see people come to know what happened there, because it's historical in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of the history, it's not just looking back at something historical. It's also considering that this is part of an ongoing movement of prophecy,
Mm-hmm.
all over the prophets. In Ezekiel, Jeremiah just recently dove into Jeremiah 31 and saw how many of those prophecies are now coming to life about things happening in the hills of Samaria, right? So this is where the first BYNA Yosef Congress happened, in the hills of Samaria. And one of our, I guess, attendees there, because Greg, I believe you attended the third Congress, which is later on, right?
That's
So yeah, and that myself. So you and I actually met at the third Congress in 2018, but today we're focusing on 2015, and we are honored to have Tzefania and Reyyna Pappas, who were there as eyewitnesses in Ariel, Israel in 2015. So tell us a little bit about you guys and just what you guys do.
Well, we are involved with Beyond the Mountain, as people may be familiar with that, with Shlomo. And anyway, yeah. So sorry if my volume was down, but just
Yeah,
want to let you know,
there you
yeah.
go.
So am involved with Shlomo currently, and I was initially the communications director, the first one for when BYNA, BYNA Yosef North America, was formed. And then I just felt the father moving in a different direction, a direction that still I believed was a support to what BYNA was doing. And that was Beyond the Mountain. And that really was kind of launched at the last Congress in 2018 when Shlomo and I met. And that was sort of like the father was just was in the infancy of the details at that point. And so that's what we have. It's a little bit about me, and here's my dear wife, Reyyna. And it's hey, a helpmate. You need a helpmate to help things out, right? So here she's helped me out a great deal in a lot of things, and particularly when it came to actually even reporting on this 2015 Congress when we got back. She was the one that prodded me and said, you have to put a presentation together because people need to know about this. And the location that worked out was the Jerusalem Community Center. How about that?
Well, welcome. Thank you for sharing that and and Reyyna definitely contributes quite a bit, and to the only things we do with Beyond the Mountain, and thanks to her, we are much better at presenting and getting our thoughts together. So yeah, thank you, Reyyna, for all that you do. And so I want to get started. Really want to just play some clips of behind the scenes of what's going on now. This is a video project that I have, the honor of spearheading, along with Tzefania and Reyyna, who have provided their own footage, and then with Greg Raley, helping organize all the logistics behind the scenes. But basically, what we've done is we've gone through 8 different time zones. In the last couple of weeks, we've interviewed, I want to say, about 10 different people, everywhere from Switzerland, Holland, Sweden, Canada, Israel, and here in North America as well. And so, we've got quite a bit of engagement that even though the event happened 7 years ago, there's still a lot of enthusiasm about the roots of it and how people came to this understanding. Goes a little deeper than just, I can identify biblical roots or Israelite roots or Ephraimite roots. Now we're putting it into action with these events, right? And so that's when we want to be an encouragement to people, really more first and foremost, that as we remember that we want to provide this as an encouragement. So as we're getting started here, I'll say just a quick prayer. Abba, that you may allow, Abba in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together, and all those listening now or later, let this be a moment where they can have their swords sharpened, that they can feel empowered, they can feel that there is certainly a movement of your spirit, that we may learn to truly worship you in spirit and truth instead of our own opinions and ideas. That we really truly humble ourselves before you and ask you to join this broadcast, join this discussion, so that we can be led by you, and all the things that will be talked about during this broadcast that to be reach the hearts that need to hear this. And we just ask you this in Yeshua's name. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you guys are going to have to help me out. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down here in the broadcast, whether you could hear it or not, because we've had a little bit of issue with that. So let me get this out of the way. So far, I know I had a 7th anniversary live stream. So right now, I wanted to play just a little clip of Ephraim Ramona. Can everyone see Ephraim Ramona? Can you guys see that? Okay, good. So this is just an excerpt of the interview that I did with them. So we'll get started with that.
Just very simply, everybody knows, what we're talking about, the scriptures that are the foundations for this, mainly the covenants that was made with the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the faithfulness of covenant-keeping Elohim, who has made these covenants, and then reiterated the covenants over and over through the prophets. And so I don't have to go over, I think almost everyone that's a Christian that has read the Bible, or Jewish person growing up in Israel in the educational system, knows basically the history of the Bible and Yahweh's people. So this is how we are looking at this in our generation. Basically, the covenants that were made in the beginning with the forefathers was that they would be a nation, a goy, is a Hebrew word, nation, a company of nations, and with the blessing of Joseph and Manasseh and Ephraim in Genesis 48, we see another term used there, Melo HaGoyim, which means the fullness of the nations. So then as you jump into the history of Israel, we come to that famous Ezekiel 37 scripture with the dry bones. And in the context of that particular prophet, he takes these two sticks. Etzim
Tree.
means trees, basically two trees, and is asked to, hold them up. And when people ask what they're for, he simply says to them that these are two nations. A little bit later on in the chapter, he said there are two kingdoms, two nations. Well, coming back to the idea of goys and goyim, meaning more than one or two. So, and in history, Jacob was divided into two houses, as we know throughout many of the prophets. He addresses the two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. They were to be, and as it says in Ezekiel 37, these are two nations, but they will no longer be two nations, that when the Father takes a hold of them, restores them, he will bring them back together again as the covenant with Abraham and the promises to bring them, make them one in the land. And so this is kind of what we're looking at as the foundation for the reconstitution of the national identity of the northern kingdom of Israel, sometimes called Joseph, house of Joseph, or Ephraim. Is like a generic term. Ephraim's like a generic term to remind us of the multiplicity of those covenant promises. So that's it's more or less the foundation scripturally, although it's in all the prophets. I mean, once one catches the historical significance of what has been written in the Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, we see that the Father is demonstrating his faithfulness in keeping the covenants. So that kind of led us up to the idea, because we're living in Israel and we know the history of Zionism, that in the 1800s there was this movement to reconstitute or restore the national identity of the Jewish side of the family, which we believe is that first stick of Ezekiel, the house of Judah, and his companions. So after, living in the land, living in the reality of those scriptures that have been fulfilled in 1948, born in a day, we thought, and also at the same time, he said to the prophet, once you have the first stick, go out and fetch the other stick, the stick of Joseph in the hand of Ephraim. And over the years, we have seen and heard many non-Jews coming to the land, feeling like they're home, start to identify to some of the scriptures, like keeping the Shabbat and doing things like that, in the Moedim, that was drawing them into something that's going on in their hearts.
And feeling that they're home when they come to Israel.
Yeah. And so, it happened to me as well. That incredible feeling, that was many years ago, but it hasn't left. I feel that this is still my home. And of course, Ramona was born here. She was born in this home, but her homeland is the house of Judah and this nation of Israel.
All right, so we're going to stop it right there. Just a little excerpt of of them sharing, you can see how in depth and how rich these ideas are, the origins of this, right? So Tzefania, any thoughts, Tzefania, Reyyna, any thoughts about, since you guys were there, some of what you just heard, how that was maybe shared while you were there at the event? Anything you'd like to share about that?
Well, what I would like to say is that coming together totally exemplified the house of Ephraim, converging on the land and just coming back home. And if you could speak to any of the other Congress participants, everyone will tell you that they definitely felt as if they were home, okay? And actually, when you leave, you feel the sting of the exile. You just really do. I mean, when it's time to go home, I weep, you know, and because I know, and I knew that when my feet, you know, hit that land, I just felt like I belonged there.
Yes, I feel the same, and just to be able to see at the Congress 15 nations actually who were participating in this event. I mean, you know that the word has gone out to the four corners of the earth, and then to see those corners of the earth participating in this event, and I really mean corners. I mean, we're talking India, Sri Lanka, even Africa, you know, Australia, yeah, and so the Isles of the Sea even, and to see that, and it really begins to put the prophetic scriptures into context, where you're saying the Father really genuinely is doing something in our day.
And he's faithful, just like they talked about. That there's a faithfulness aspect to this. It's just, you know, we could run the risk of just, you know, looking at the signs and wonders and all, you know, and we throw this word around, revival. We throw revival around, and it's kind of like, well, it's more of the reconstitution, it's the restoration. It's actually more specific than just waking people up. Well, waking you up to what? What are the dry bones waking up to? Right? You could wake up from the valley of dry bones and then go your separate way, right? Go your separate denominations and opinions, right? So, Greg, as you're hearing this, like, you know, something that stood out to you about Ephraim Ramona, because, you know, you've spent time, and now that, you know, you're working through, I'll just quick shout out to Greg, sorting through lots of videos and posts on social media. I just want to commend you, brother. You've done an incredible work. You know, your working hands to get this out there. I believe that a lot of what we're doing now live, and those who are joining us live, are aware of BYNA, of the BYNA Yosef idea, because of, you know, your efforts and everyone on the communications team. But so thanks for that. And so, anything that stood out to you about what they're sharing on their story?
Well, you know, I feel like we're doing what the First Zionist Congress people did. They preserved history. And we have the history of the First Zionist Congresses because of the people behind the scenes, and it's a wonderful for me to be able to partake in that historical undertaking. But I would like to shout out to a few people. There's our old friend Brian, and there's Joe Mandiola, and speaking of people that were at the Congresses, Hadassah's out there. I want to say hello to Hadassah, our wonderful European friends that are on board. Thanks for coming in. In fact, I think we're going to be hearing from Hadassah a little bit, aren't we? You're on mute.
Yeah. Now I got to use my cup again here. So sorry, I was on mute. Goodness, where are my manners? Yeah, I'm just trying to set up the next thing. So yes, I do have Jonathan, Hadassah, and Case out in Holland. They are with BYNA Yosef Holland. and had some wonderful insights. I wish I could play the whole clip for you because it would really liven things up, but we'd probably go quite a bit because what's going on in different parts of the world, those of us who we're here in North America, I was deeply encouraged when I heard their testimony of what's going on in their region and the picnics they were having and just getting people together who may have never been able to hear this inside of the four walls of their religious places, so, that they were able to reach them where they were at. And then also, what really touched my heart is Jonathan, he's close to all of us. He's the youth, the part of the youth that would be attending this, the next generation. And thanks to him, shout out to Jonathan if you're listening, and to Hadassah, in case that I just about an hour ago I got video clips from the first Congress sent to me, and we're gonna try to play some of those clips. And I was not expecting it; it was perfect timing. So I got a message saying, "Hey, we just uploaded a few more video clips." So thank you for that, guys. Who, if you guys are out there listening. So yeah, we go from here. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just reiterate this whole idea that Ephraim was talking about is national identity. National identity. Here we have been a people wandering to and fro throughout the earth, wondering who we are. And this was a prophetic proclamation that we need to think of ourselves as a national people. It began to emerge for the Jewish people in 1897 when Theodor Herzl started the first Zionist Congress. And then it emerged 118 years later for Ephraim in 2017. And Greg, you're right on. This is history.
Yeah, and speaking of that, because I do feel that we're not just covering the house of Ephraim, but also the house of Judah, right? And that we've got clips from Hanok Young that I'd like to play for you. If you give me just one moment, okay? I'm going to cue that up. If y'all want to share a story about some of what you've witnessed in Ariel, give me just 30 seconds. We'll be right back, okay?
Yes, Ariel is just you could call Ariel, if we want to just talk about the city first of all, before you talk about the hotel. It would be considered basically the modern day capital of Samaria, or the Shomron, if you will. And then the hotel itself, the historical aspect of the Eshel HaShomron Hotel, it has amazing history. The folks who run that, Tuvia and Menachem, and Menachem's late wife, they just amazing how they have stood in the gap for the modern nation of Israel. They have endured terrorism. You have the scars of that in the hotel. It just comes with the story. And to see these two wonderful servants, working at this hotel, who own this hotel, running it, to open up their arms toward the people of Ephraim, there's no words to describe what that's all about, really.
That's great. Thank you. Sorry I missed that. I had to step away for just a second. I wanted to play kind of on the same lines of the history of what we were talking about with the first Zionist Congress. And, Ephraim mentioned towards the end, Ramona's tribal identity, the House of Judah, right? And so we did have an interview with someone from the House of Judah, Hanok Young, like I mentioned. And I'd like to play a clip of that interview that we had with him last week in Israel. So I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
It was back in 1994 when I first began encountering people who would say to me, I'm not Jewish, but I think I'm part of Israel. Now, we didn't even, no one even had a name at the time. No one was saying Ephraimites or B'nai Yosef. 10 tribers was a term thrown around a lot then. I actually knew someone back in the 90s who wanted to call people like that Joes, Joes, Josephites. But then you'd have Jews and Joes, which to me always kind of sounded like G.I. Joe, and whatever. Make a long story short. So I've been involved one way or the other with people like this for now 28 years. And I'm close with Ephraim and Ramona. I am Israeli. And when they first broached the idea to me of a Congress of B'nai Yosef, I thought everything's coming up roses. This is, Mashiach, the Messiah is going to be knocking at the door like moments from now. We're doing everything we can, which is what we're supposed to.
All right, so it's a little excerpt there of the interview there, and so a lot of what we were kind of getting into sharing is that from the Jewish perspective, we've got a lot of really interesting things we're trying to do that our brother Jude has already been through, right? So any thoughts about some of that interaction that we I know everyone here has had an interaction with Hanuk. Greg, we'll start with you. What is your spirit say, and kind of, and also in the natural realm, kind of what hits you whenever you see someone who's an Orthodox Jewish brethren that accepts us as and recognizes us as Ephraim, and has had his an openness to interact with us and with a mutual respect. What do you think about that?
Well, it reminds me of the story of Joseph, when Joseph's brothers didn't recognize him. And that's kind of the way Christianity and Judaism, or better said, Ephraim and Judah, haven't recognized each other. And that's going to change. It's sad. It is changing. So, it's just the tip of the iceberg, really. Eventually, it's all going to melt together, and it's going to be wonderful. And, the Father's going to restore the 12 tribes. And it's going to be amazing.
Tzefania, Reyyna.
Well, we actually first met Hanuk at the March Through the Arch, which was the Messianic Israel Alliance March Through the Arch in St. Louis, Missouri. And this is what...
2008, I believe.
That was 2008. Was it? Yeah, I think that was in 2008. And what impressed us about Hanuk was that here we were talking with one another, all these different people here, just before the actual conference was actually about to start. And later on, I discover that Hanuk is an Orthodox Jewish man, and I thought, wow, this is, I just thought it was a beautiful thing, and how he just seamlessly interacted with us and embraced us, and just was fit right along with our conversation, and that identifies who Hanuk is. He has bent over backwards to actually embrace us, and I think we all need to be appreciative of that. And I know I am, and I know you two are as well. So.
Yes, we really appreciate Hanuk. He's really, stood in the gap a lot for the House of Ephraim. And, he's come here numerous times, speaking to groups, all over the country. And he's really made a great impact that way. It is a beautiful thing how he embraces us. I dare to say, though, that there probably are others who do know who we are, but because of, possibly being shunned by their, neighbors, or, they have to keep it quiet. So, but he is very bold. Whoever knows Hanuk knows that he's a bold lion. So, he's just really upfront and out in showing his support for us.
Yeah, we'll be sure to tag him in the post later, or share the link with him and let him know that we did share some of our thoughts, and definitely appreciate his time. And when you see this coming together, and it's part of the restoration, it's thank you, the three of you, for sharing that, because I've been part of different restoration movements in the past 18 years, 16 years, and some of them start off sincere, but then there's a lot of nurturing of the relationship that's required, and this is where again, we get into a lot of these subjects at Beyond the Mountain, Tzefania and I, and kind of trying to cultivate that culture of forgiveness, and really plowing those fields of love and forgiveness no matter what. When we've held on to our views and our opinions and our doctrines and everything so dearly that we forget that these things are much bigger than us. So that's what it reminds me of, is that hearing Hanok's testimony, and then seeing Ephraim and Ramona share their story and the connections that have come from their ministry work, their working hands, and seeing how this Congress came together. Really is definitely, we're saying the word historic, but it's definitely another layer of prophecy. It's prophetic in many ways, and so I do have a couple of other clips I like to play. We're about 45 minutes in. We wanted to spend about an hour or so just kind of sharing a little bit, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Thank you for your time. If you're just joining us, we are going over some clips and behind the scenes of some recent interviews we've done at the Congress for the first BYNA Yosef Congress. It's a video project that we're doing through BYNA Yosef North America, as well as through Beyond the Mountain. And so we mentioned Hadassah, Case, and Yonatan, and I'd like to play a clip of them just to, again, their testimonies. I just fascinated with what's going on in Europe. I'll play a clip of theirs. If you guys want to stand by, let me play that.
It was years before that we began to recognize that we were Israelites. I think 2008 probably, we were on a sort of community site. It was called yaspace.ning, and we met a lot of people all around the world, not from the Netherlands, but from all around the world, who had the same mindset about the two houses. So we feel ourselves coming home in that community site. And Jonathan was a little boy, and he already could share in English and writing things. So he was connected with youth on that community site. So things were going on, and yes, we have also reading the book from Batya Rutten, who is Israel. It's just on a walk, step by step. Some of this identity was added to our identity. So step by step, we became, how can I say, more adult in this. And it was in that time I saw the book of Ephraim Frank about his life from what can I say, Christian to Ephraim, and it touched my heart also. So then I asked Ephraim about, can I get more from you? How can I add my email address to newsletters or some news? Because we, the three of us, we already knew who our identity was, but we wanted to meet family, more family. And so he put us on the email list, and so I became known with his plans about the BYNA Yosef Congress, and I had a very strong longing to be there. So I asked Case, is it possible that we can come together, or will I go on my own with Jonathan. The situation was that it was at the time that we only could come together, Jonathan and I, and Kees was in his heart at home, connected with us when we were there. What can I say? One of the things I still remember is the homework we get from Eva and Frank about how our behavior had to what can I say, have to be. All the things like calendars, pronouncing names and things, we had to leave home, and we only have to come with open heart, with respect to one another, to come home as a family.
So wow, what an interesting progression there, right? Of course, this is the interview. We're back and forth. So how we were doing the interview, we were asking attendees, those who were there, how they got to the Congress or how they found out about it. And so you could notice in that answer some very specific things about identity. And one thing I want to touch on, because this may be the next clip that I'd like to play. Something, Tzefania, I want to thank you this morning. You found a clip. We've been struggling to find clips of the actual Congress event. That's still, I think I've put out the notice to say, if you have any clips, please send it my way or get a hold of me. And so this morning, Tzefania, you messaged me like, hey, I got an excerpt of a speech by Al McCarn, our dear friend Al McCarn, actually at the Congress. And it's just really special. I'd like to play that here at the end. But before we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about what Hadassah just shared. Because what stands out, aside from identity, it's the behaviors. Yes. That you know, it's like those of us who are believers and we're going into this, you know, what she's mentioning, we have to leave it behind. And I just know that Hadassah, if you're still listening, I know it's kind of late there in Holland. I can attest that just the approach of interacting with them and then seeing the work online, the blogs, the posts. I think they've interviewed us on some of the BYNA Yosef Holland. That I can truly feel that family atmosphere and that behavior that is now geared towards, let's be family. Let's leave all this stuff that we argue about, whether it's theological or names or calendars or whatever the enemy has enticed us to argue about. Yeah, that's not happening. And it's wonderful to hear Hadassah, Casey, and Jonathan, that they get it, and that because of it, we get to have fellowship with them in a very unique way. That's what I'd like to talk about. Is that what happens when we do let go of the behaviors, right? Tzefania, let's start with you. Like, what happens, Tzefania, Reyyna? What happens when we let go of the behaviors? And kind of going into your testimony before we play Al's, you know, what happens when we let the behaviors? What actually gives life to those things when we leave the behaviors behind?
Well, the relationship can flourish because you're not majoring in the minors, you know? And then the concept of Kal Chomer, if I said that correctly, you're focusing on what's really important. And even though there was a notification that went out explaining these things, you would think, this is a holy thing. Why would you even want to bring your opinion about something like a calendar or how to pronounce the name? But it was important to express that just in case someone had that in mind, you know, to bring their opinions.
Yeah, and the emphasis of the Congress, the big theme was not only the whole idea of national identity, but also the idea of community and how we need to start going beyond this, I could say, like a congregational mindset in a sense, where now we see each other in a form of a community. and we have a community mindset. And if we have a community mindset, even if we have a local community that we speak into, that means if there's others outside of that community who have that same understanding as well, we'll just connect with them, and then they become part of the bigger community. We see that it's a bigger community, a bigger family. And that's what was so much of a blessing to see that bond beginning to form as people laid aside any agendas. They said, it's not about my agenda, it's about what the Father wants. And that's what we're gonna connect on.
Amen. That is such an important idea. And Greg, I'd like to hear ideas on this because for people don't know, we're both in Texas. We're about 3 hours away. And I know we don't see each other often, but I do sense, just like I have with Tzefania, no matter he's in, you guys are in Georgia, I'm in Texas. The community aspect of it is very important. So Greg, share some of what you sense about Hadassah's testimony and some of the ideas that Tzefania just sharing, if you have anything.
Well, that the Hadassah's attitude and Tzefania, his attitude, and others in BYNA Yosef, their attitude is that, hey, we're not going to divide ourselves over things that aren't really all that important. I mean, yeah, they're a little important, but why divide yourselves over it? That's how denominations are formed. And I'm going to tell you, BYNA Yosef is not a denomination. And why? Because we love everybody. We are inclusive. And that's what we're supposed to do. I used to argue about everything. And now you're not going to get an argument out of me about anything, except one thing. Is my father is good. He's merciful. And don't even talk about a counter, because I won't even talk to you about it anymore like I used to. So and I think that's what the Father's wanting to do in us, mature us as a people, as an Ephraimite people. And once we do that, we quit dividing ourselves over things, as Hadassah was talking about. That spirit is very powerful, and that's what's going to build our family, our Ephraimite family, along with Yehuda. So that's my thoughts.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think we all kind of have gone through a season, maybe not all, but a lot of us have gone through the season where we feel that we feel compelled to defend our beliefs, right? We feel compelled to defend our position. And I too was a bit headstrong in my early days in this. It's natural. I think when you're leaving Egypt and you're excited, you're leaving all the different things that you thought were true, and you're going like, wow, it's not. I think that's probably another phase of this maturity, right? That people have to kind of get over the fact that, we got it wrong, and that, like Jeremiah 16 is that, we're going to cry out that these traditions and opinions and we're going to cry out at, these are of no use. The traditions are of no use, and that we're going to cry out, and that's what's happening. This crying out, and so before we move on, we play this last clip here of Al McCarn. Tzefania, Reyyna, we got some really good footage from you guys that was still in post-production, and I didn't want to play it since you guys are live. We'd rather just hear it live here. Just a little bit about, how you heard about the Congress, or just anything you'd like to share with regards to this move, because I think first and foremost, I would like to just mention that, how much it's blessed me to be connected with you, both of you. And the time we spent in 2019, the following year after we met in person at Beyond the Mountain, the first event, one of the things I really noticed, both of you had a shepherd's heart with people. And so as we're talking, kind of tying in these ideas about community and relationship, it really takes those who have a shepherd's heart to help guide and cultivate, and really, people like me in my situation where I'm still learning a lot of aspects of relationships and community and kingdom, So I'd love to hear. We all would love to hear a little more from you about it, and just some of the relationship aspect that we're so desperately needing, that you guys experienced maybe there at the first Congress, and then how has that grown since then? You know.
Uh, yeah, I think it was again that aspect of the idea of laying aside one's agendas and being able to see that that you weren't the only one that was doing that. There were others that were actively participating and creating an environment to where let's have a relationship. Let's relate to one another as Israelites, as a family. And I think that was something that has carried over in how we relate to one another and relate to others as we came back from that Congress. That was laid very strongly upon our heart. And what happened out of that Congress was we started these meetings that were called a National Shabbat. They're called family reunions now. But that was all about building up each other as family. And again, it was supposed to be about laying aside agendas. That was the whole point of it is. And embracing each other around our national identity, that we are Israelites and we love Yeshua. Full stop. Okay, you don't need to bring anything else into the picture. Okay, let's actually work on around that whole theme, if you will.
And to concentrate on worshiping our King.
That's definitely wonderful to hear that and to be encouraged by it, no matter the distance, no matter if we're all scattered and out. And so, Greg, any thoughts on that before we move on to the next clip?
No, not really. Tzefania said it all, and I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. No, I'll pass on this one.
No arguments on this time, right? No, it's okay. So, we certainly will take it. Think about having the Israelites showing up to the land. This is kind of setting up this clip with Al. You know, some of the things he says, right, and it'll be just a few minutes of the clip. He talks about learning Hebrew. That right there stood out to me. When you present that idea to people who are in their comfort zone, who are comfortable with their native language, you know, those of us who are English speakers, we think that English just existed forever, and somehow it's because it's spoken all around the world. You know, from airports to, you know, user manuals, it's all in English, right? Somehow it's like more important than others, but you get to where you're looking at the kingdom and the restoration, you go, wait a minute, Hebrew is actually a lot more important. And I know modern Hebrew is it's derived from the biblical, but, you know, still I think this, the importance of learning it and being in the land there, I thought it was really interesting. So I'm going to share this clip here of Al, which I am deeply grateful for Tzefania going out of his way and getting this to me.
Entered this life, German and Swiss, Swedish, Finnish, Welsh and English, Scottish, Irish, Sri Lankan, Indian, Dutch, French, and American. But now we are Israelite. And ultimately our citizenship and our residence will be in Israel. Whether that happens within our lifetimes or 2 generations from now is yet to be seen. But we are confident enough in the promises of our God that we are willing to take great risks of faith on those promises. But what risks are we to take? And how are we to build this nation? Let me conclude with some suggestions. First of all, learn Hebrew. We must covenant with one another to become as fluent in this language of our nation as we have been in our birth languages. It will be difficult, but we can expect our God to help us, just as he promised through the prophet Tzefania. Let us resolve to hold our congresses and conferences in Hebrew at the earliest possible date. Second, establish local Ephraimite communities. This is something our brother John Conrad and others will address later in the Congress. All I'll say here is that we must learn to live together where we are as Torah-keeping Ephraimites, walking out in community the righteous lifestyle we have been studying. Third, communicate with each other locally, regionally, and globally. Virtual communities already exist thanks to the internet. Let us expand on that by making concerted efforts to broaden and deepen our relationships. Those efforts include travel to other places, even to other countries, so that we can learn from one another. What prevents Ephraimite teachers in India or Germany from coming to the US and Canada to share their knowledge? What prevents Ephraimites in North America from doing the same? And when we travel, why should we plan to stay only for a week or two? Why not make it an extended stay, even a year or two? Is that not the example of the apostles before us? This is how we will build this nation on a global scale. Number 4, tell others about our Israelite identity. This also is a difficult thing, as we well know. At the least, we will appear foolish to our friends and family, and at the worst, it will drive a wedge between us and them that could cut us off from their fellowship. Nevertheless, if we truly believe the promises of our King, then we will act on them by sharing this news at every opportunity. Number 5, let's communicate our message through a national media. This already exists in small, uncoordinated ways. There are broadcast outlets like TV7 Israel News in Finland and the Hebrew Nation Radio in the US. We have Hebrew roots bloggers around the world and Torah teaching ministries with a global reach. It's time to bring these threads together into a coordinated press corps or media corps, providing not only Hebraic insights on Scripture, but news about our nation as it develops in the nations of our current exile. 6th, let us humbly ask Judah for help in understanding Torah. What have the sages been learning all these centuries? And what do yeshiva students learn? How can we as Ephraimites join in this learning so that we may be better prepared to join with Judah in this expanding Ephraimite nation? We should not expect Judah to regard us with any degree of seriousness unless we are willing to listen to him with the respectful attention he deserves. This does not mean we depart from our allegiance to Messiah Yeshua. If Yeshua really did come to teach Torah perfectly, then we should find much in rabbinic learning that can help us understand how he did that and how he walked it out how he walked out what he taught. Let me offer a personal example. All my life growing up in church, I knew I was supposed to invite Jesus into my heart and he was supposed to live there. But it was not until I heard a rabbi teaching the lessons of the Mishkan that I understood exactly how that works.
Pretty special stuff, huh? You know, that a lot of what he shared has come to pass, of merging together media outlets, right? The BYNA Yosef North America, in social media. I think there's a few other radio stations that are doing what he's shared. I know that there have been numerous people that share that they are learning Hebrew. I myself trying to keep up with it, and I watch everything from Israeli TV shows and programming and YouTube videos just to keep myself grounded in that. Part of me is probably a little homesick as well. The times that I've been to the land, the 2 times I've been personally, left me homesick. I'm like, wow, how could this place feel like home, even though we're programmed and told that it's not? So, any initial thoughts about what Al shared? Just a small excerpt there. Any thoughts here before we close?
A little story about how I found BYNA Yosef, the first Congress. I was seeking the Father about who was Ephraim, where was Ephraim, I decided to pray, fast, and declare to the Lord, I'm going to fast, and I'm going to fast until He answers my prayer. Where is Ephraim? So I got on my knees and I started to pray and declare my fast to the Lord. And I barely got those words out of my mouth. And the Father said in my spirit, go Google, where is Ephraim? Okay. So I got up and I Googled, where is Ephraim? And up came Ephraim Frank, who we were talking about, and the first Congress. And the first video I watched was what Al McCarm was saying there, his speech right there. That was the first thing I heard from the first BYNA Yosef Congress. And immediately, because of the way that happened, I knew I'd heard from the Father, and that's how I got connected. So that video reminded me of that event. Now, I didn't get to the Congress till the third Congress, but I think, Tzefania, you and your wife there have been to all three Congresses, right?
Yes. Let me show you something here. The inspiration of Al's is this book right here. I hope everybody sees it not backwards like I'm seeing it.
It says give me a place where I may dwell. An Ephraimite affirmation by Albert Jackson McCarn. Awesome.
What happened is that we got a hold of that. I consume material pretty quickly, and I read that before we came. And then Reyyna brought it with on the plane to Israel, and she was reading it on the plane. And she was just absolutely so excited. She was so excited. I mean, and I was excited too when I read the book as well. And then a lot of that's in that book is in a compressed form in his address that he's talking about. And I think a lot of what he's talking about, we need to start looking at those. He numbered them and saying, okay, what do we need to pray over here now that hasn't happened yet? Mm-hmm. Or maybe is there something here that he did talk about that's happened to some degree, but we want it to go further. Let's pray into that too. How about that? And like, for instance, he talked about in the sense about the media where it would be linking up, but he was talking about linking it up worldwide. And I think that would be, if we had some kind of like a central point. I think Shlomo and I have discussed something like this too.
Mm-hmm, yes.
A central point for people to go to hear about different things having to do with national identity, what's happening, that type of thing.
So this book really got me excited because it really emphasizes nation building. And if I can just really quickly. Okay, so the first chapter is Give Me a Place Where I May Dwell. Then Reclaiming the Name of Our Fathers. Then Turning from the Sin of Our Fathers. Then Reclaiming the Land of Our Fathers. Rebuilding Our Father's Nation, and Living Among Our Father's Kin. So after reading this, I mean, there was a lot to be excited about. So just to wrap it up for me, this first Congress really brought forth, nation building and how to be a people and things to do once you got back home, and it's still alive in us right now, because we believe in everything that was discussed, and it's just in our hearts to actually make that come to fruition, only by His Spirit, So we're open to whatever the Father has for us to do, to do our part.
That's a blessing to hear, and just absolutely thrilled that we got to get together tonight and share these things. And one last question for Tzefania, Reyyna. As eyewitnesses at the Congress, I'm not sure if you guys were there when Al was giving this speech. Kind of what was the mood in the room as he was sharing this? Because obviously it was, I think, about a half-hour presentation, but just kind of what was there a bit of a shift? I mean, what was kind of the mood? If you could give us a little insight.
Well, I think for some, they were actually very much challenged by what he said. I mean, because this was like almost foreign talk to some people. I mean, you're really getting serious about this national identity, aren't you? And I think that's what was so inspirational to Ephraim and Ramona when they first got in touch with Al, and his enthusiasm to, and as they began to speak into Al about different things about national identity and how he just grabbed a hold of it. And as Ephraim has actually described, Al just grabbed a hold of it and he just ran with it.
Absolutely.
But to us, for some, it was kind of like a shocking readjustment to kind of let me, whoa, this is like, whoa. To us, it was absolutely refreshing to hear somebody speak out exactly what was going on, stirring in our hearts. And let me just go back to how we found out about the Congress. And what happened is that we were discussing things, and we were driving in the car as we just start talking about some things, and all of a sudden just came upon me as we were talking about something, and I had this epiphany, and I said, "Oh my goodness, hon, we need to have a Zionist Congress for Ephraim. Yehuda had theirs. We need to have a Zionist Congress for Ephraim." And then I got so excited that the camera went and moved on us here. So as
awesome.
I'm reliving the moment here.
There you go.
So pardon us with that there. Anyway, so here it was. So I said to her that, and then I was stirring in my heart. And then the next day, and I started thinking about where could this be? Okay, well, Herzl had it in Basel, Switzerland. That doesn't make sense for us. Oh, our brothers have went back to the land. Israel is a nation again. And guess what? We could have this at the modern day capital of Ariel in Shomron and Samaria. So, wow, I said, then we looked at each other and we go, we need to contact Ephraim and Ramona about this. We need to mention this about, and then it was kind of like, I almost took it when we read the email, like it was kind of like matter of fact, kind of like, well, yeah, that's going to happen. We're planning it as you wrote this letter. We've been planning on this, and oh yeah, and then also Ariel. It is going to be taking place in Ariel, at the Eshel HaShomron Hotel, and then we didn't even know that there was this hotel in Ariel. We didn't even know about this place, and then of course, once they said Eshel HaShomron, we had to look it up on the internet and find out what is this place. And we were like getting really excited then.
Yeah, I love those stories and how it's you were already being set up as a witness to where they're going, yeah, it's in motion. You're like, all right, well, here's a witness, and then Al McCarn, picking it up and running with it. These are all really special things, kind of piecing together that makes up the people, right? The identity part and the coat of many colors you see, the nations and people of different backgrounds. So as we wind down here, I'd like to show some photos, and we can kind of, as we wind down, we can kind of narrate and talk, and then we'll end the broadcast that way. I think that'd be appropriate if you guys are okay with that. So it's kind of like a DVD commentary, right? Like, if you guys recognize some people, kind of Tzefania, Reyyna would definitely will probably recognize some of the people in the photos, and then just a few of them here. So I'll go ahead and do this last screen share here. There's no audio on this, but we will certainly have it here. So I remember this here was the lobby, and from what I recall from the testimonies of people who were sharing what it was like being there, at least at this first one. This happened some of the third, but we're going to focus what happened on the first. That this became the norm. This became the meeting ground a lot. It looks like it's already after hours at night, after all the meetings are done, right? And so what I was reported to me, shared with me, that there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of study, a lot of worship after hours. So that's what's going on here. Tzefania, Reyyna, any other comments? I think you may be actually in one of these shots here.
Yeah, I see the back of me right there. I'm trying to see where I might be. Oh, I see Reyyna just kind of beyond me. I see. You can't really see her, but I think that she's on the side of me there. But
okay.
yeah, I recognize a lot of people there. I see Frank Houtz there. And what was interesting is that I had known about Frank, and Reyyna really appreciated Frank and going to some of the Messianic Israel Alliance conferences and hearing him speak and everything. And this is the first time I just sat down and really had a conversation with him, and he started sharing some things, and he really appreciated, because when he sees that he's connecting with you, he basically, now you got a friend for life, and that's Frank just really, we talked for hours, and so it was such a blessing to get to know him, and so of him of blessed memory. Yes. Wow. And then I see other folks that I recognize. Yeah. And that's a friend that was locally who flew over with us right there. That's right in that's Scott Nickerson, or Nehemiah as we call him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I'm going through the photos here. So this was basically in the conference room, and forgive, we really need to do a little bit of some editing on the photos, and some of the colors are a little off, but as we get them in, we're trying to make sure we get something behind the scenes. So if you can see there, that's how the tables were set up.
Yes.
For what I recall from the third Congress, but then also with regards to the first one, that there were the roundtable sessions where
yes.
they talked about discussion topics, right? And so at the first Congress, I believe that a lot of just real basic ideas of identity, and also how to interact with a brother Judah. Were there any other subjects at the roundtables that you guys really hit home for you guys?
Well, we just what we appreciated about we got actually a schedule in front of us.
Oh wow!
Okay. Reyyna is our historian of the family here. So, and I think what was interesting is that there was one particular. It was called Community and National Unity. That was a real nice roundtable discussion that we had about. But that was more. You'd have a presenter, and then you'd have a roundtable discussion about what was presented, and also I would say about even Al's opening address, which was on that was on Tuesday of that year, and he shared about the foundations of national identity. That was the title of his presentation, his address, actually. And then we went ahead and actually had a roundtable discussion about what he talked about, which was such a blessing to be able to talk about and dialogue about this very thing. So this was not a conference. This was a congress.
Yes.
There's something very different about that, because a conference is a totally different environment. This was all about a very pragmatic types of discussions about what how are we going to come together as national people? And that's what we reappreciated about all these different, presentations and the discussions that pertain to those presentations. Yes.
So what would happen is that a discussion would take place, and each table would have a facilitator, would take down notes, and then at the very end, the facilitators would discuss, what their table, came up with regarding the presentation.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
And there was like a scribe at the table too. That
Right,
was
a scribe,
they were
yes.
assigned to be a scribe. You had the facilitators at the table, and then the scribe
Right.
who would be recording things down. And I can tell you, our scribe was her name was Anissa.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. She's now just recently married, so I don't know what her surname is at this time. But Anissa, you did a great job at our table, and we won't forget that. So.
That's great.
And the fact that she actually is involved in publishing and actually and does a lot of things very similar, trying to proofread various books and this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, we had like somebody at our table with did an amazing job.
That's awesome. Yeah, the next photos here, we've got Fran Ramona with Jonathan in Holland.
Yes.
It's a great photo there. We got some other photos of attendees. We mentioned Frank House.
Frank House
and
and
also
Ralph Craddy.
Yeah, he's
Designed.
Yeah, Ralph Craddy. One thing to note about him, he's a graphic artist. He designed the banners.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, we'll have to get some shots of that later in the video.
Yeah.
And so we've got some of these banners being held up that were made. Says in Hebrew, it says Yehuda and then Ephraim. I guess you can see it kind of in English there, but those are the Hebrew letters there. And so these are just photos that we found. Special thanks to Jonathan. There's Jonathan again with two gentlemen there. I have never met them, but I've heard a lot about how lively the worship got with a gentleman named Carrie,
yes.
right?
Oh my goodness, I guess it's Carrie Alexander and the brother. I have his name. He participates sometimes, and we hear him sharing on BYNA Yosef International Telegram channel, and that brother and Carrie. Wow, they just really were kind of knit together really well in their singing and
The worship.
the worship, and we actually met them at the airport. At the airport when we came to Israel.
That's great.
And that is us with Jonathan there in the center.
Yeah, he's definitely the
He's a
the
special
networker.
man.
He was everywhere. And then these are photos he provided. So special thanks to Jonathan and Hadassah, I believe. He said that both of them had their phones out and were taking photos, snapping photos for us.
Okay.
And so they shared that. And here's Hadassah and Reyyna.
Yes.
So wonderful photo there. Such a joy in the faces and just being connected, being there, and then outdoors. I believe this was outside of the little picnic area, or I guess the covered area. There's behind there the rooms, and so that's Francois from France. And we've got some interviews from him, and probably another 10 people that we're going, and we've got some footage to share on the video. So that's just kind of wrapping up here. Thank you, those of us who are still with us. Those maybe watching the recap, you can certainly go back and forward and hear what we said, because a lot of what we're sharing may be new to those who are hearing this. Maybe if you do share this video, you may share it with someone who is very new or perhaps never been exposed to any of this Ephraimite ideas or national identity. But it's part of our calling, and that's the thing is Greg and I, we talked about the theme of this, and it's really about sharpening one another and sharpening our tools that in Isaiah 54 it talks about the callings that we have, that these weapons that are formed against us won't prosper. To stand up for who we are definitely calls for some things to come against us. It's not without any type of ease. We don't have it and just oh yeah, it's just an easy thing. When a lot of us have had to fight through this, right? We've had to fight for this identity. We've had to even getting into the land. Struggle. There's obstacles and things. But just like those of us who we were not a people, right? We didn't have an identity, like in Hosea, right? All of a sudden, we realize we have our Heavenly Father. And through Messiah, we've got this identity restored to us, and it's almost like we get to break this orphan spirit off of us and go, we know who our Father is, and we're going to run to His land, and nothing's going to stop us. So let that be an inspiration for those who may be bogged down, maybe discouraged or isolated, and not really knowing, well, where do I go from here? That here, just on this broadcast, we've shared some testimonies. We've got real people with real stories, and we've got plenty more where that came from. And just ask for everyone to keep us in prayer as we are documenting and helping tell the story. We do have technical challenges at times. We do have just trying to navigate through all of the possibilities. But all in all, we are looking to, Yah willing, to have this video out in its entirety, hopefully in the next few weeks, if not sooner. But, we just want to, encourage those who are still, new or even seasoned in this, that identity is important, and that walking in this and pressing in, seeking our Heavenly Father's face is what we need to be focusing on. And I was just absolutely honored to be here together with you guys talking about the First Congress, and so thank you and everyone. And any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to share?
Well, I would like to just say thanks to everybody for being here. It has been 7 years now, and they haven't been that easy, but the 7 years are foundational. Mm-hmm. I believe that we can expect a viral growth in BYNA Yosef. And I'm not talking about the organization, I'm talking about the children of Joseph. I believe it's coming. The ones who've gone before us, especially the early pioneers, they paid a big price to help us all understand what our identity is. But God has promised to restore the 12 tribes. You can see it right there in the book of Revelation, where it talks about the 144,000 from each tribe. So I would say be encouraged, pioneers and people that have labored so hard. I believe the future for the 12 tribes, the restoration of all of Israel, is going to become viral as the Father moves by His Spirit. Mm-hmm. Thanks for what you did, Solomon, in directing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all your love and support, Greg, and all the phone calls we take when I got to share some random thing like, oh, what do you think about this, Greg? So I thank you for being there and being a brother and providing that community for me. I appreciate you, brother, very much. And Tzefania, Reyyna, any thoughts? And if you don't mind, after you share, if you could close us in prayer as well, after you guys share your last thoughts and prayer.
You want to?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Solomon, I'd like to thank you for what you have done here this evening. You've done a really great job. I'm not really one for the camera. I think you know that. But I also would like to thank the servants of Yah, and that is Ephraim and Ramona Frank. They've just done so much for the people of Israel, and they continue to do so. And without them, there probably would not have been, a Congress, but they listened to the Father's voice and they moved by the Ruach, and it happened, and He's not done with them, I know. So hopefully we'll get a chance to, meet there again in the land. So
I would like to mention about the letter that was posted on the BYNA Yosef North America Facebook page, and it's a letter that Ephraim Ramona wrote in commemoration of this 7th anniversary. And one thing that struck me is that the Father has given me some visions and dreams, and I've repeated them to various people. Shlomo knows some of these quite amazing dreams that I've had. And there's something in that letter that Ephraim wrote, and he mentioned that to keep in mind that Yehuda is that splendid horse in battle, if you will, as it says in Zechariah, and that he will be the one to usher in our safe passage and into taking up our inheritance. And what really struck me about that, I thought, why didn't I see that before? And it all tied in to the fact that this dream that I had was a biblical dream, and it was all tied into the fact that Yehuda became the splendid horse in battle and went ahead and took care of their enemies. And in so doing, in this dream that I had, it opened the door for us to come home. And so when I saw that, I never pieced that together. That was a biblical image that I had. And when I read that in the letter, I got all excited. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like, you can't allow. So I would say for some of you out there who are listening to this right now, and you're saying, how long, Father, how long? Do not allow the enemy to take away your joy. Do not allow the enemy to rob you of your passion for seeking the restoration and reconstitution for the people of Ephraim. Stand and see the restoration of all of Israel. And that's what I want to go into prayer about now too. So,
Amen.
So Father, that's what we want to pray about, Father, that we would be patient. We would not allow our impatience to get the best of us, Father. We would not allow ourselves to see everything that's going around us and allow all the different kinds of news stories that we hear that are totally depressing, Father. But these are all events that must happen for us to come home. They have to happen for us to come home. Let us be reminded of that these are all events in the course of history that will cause certain events to transpire that will open the door for us to take up our inheritance, and that we would be planted in our own soil, just like our Jewish brothers are right now. So, Father, I just ask that we would be servants, and that we would say to the Father, Hineni, here I am. Do with me whatever you will in regard to this restoration. I want to be your servant in this, Father. Use me, guide me. I want to be a part of this vision, this prophetic vision in the last days that we're in right now. So, Father, I ask that right now the enemy would be silenced and people would take their authority in Yeshua, and they would silence all those voices from Hasatan who is discouraging them, causing them to fear. We pray for the spirit of fear to be cast to the dry place right now, Father, in Yeshua's name, and that the people of Israel, the people of Ephraim, northern Israel, would rise up as courageous people in these last days. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tzefania, Reyyna, Greg. Thank you for sharing your hearts, and everyone out there who's joined us. Till we meet again. Greg, we got to do this again sometime with some other content. I think we definitely established something. It was our first time going live. Apologize in the beginning. We had a little technical issue getting through Facebook, but we got through, and here we are. And I'll go ahead and stop the live stream. So have a good night, everyone, and good evening wherever you are. And saying, like they say in Hebrew, in Israel, they say "Laitlaot," which is see you later. And shalom.
Litro.
Shalom, shalom.